Where in the world do you see rocks? When you're hiking on a trail, when you're walking down the sidewalk to your friend's house, in your backyard. Rocks are everywhere. When you pick up a rock, take a close look at it. Do you know what it's made of? What it's called? How it got that cool look? Well, there are more to rocks than you ever imagined. Welcome to the Rock Cycle. My name is Jewel, and today you're going to learn about how the rock cycle works. We will start on the structure of the Earth. Then you will learn what igneous, sedimentary, and metamorphic rocks are and how they tie into the rock cycle. Finally, we are going to work through the entire rock cycle. Let's get rockin'! The rock cycle is the largest cycle on Earth. It is constantly moving, churning new rocks from old. Just like the water cycle, where water is recycled over and over, the Earth recycles its rocks over and over. The cycle takes new rocks, breaks them down, deposits them into layers, and melts the rocks again into magma, where they are then made into new rocks. We use rocks to learn about the Earth's history and structure. This study is called geology. The word geology comes from the Latin word geologia, meaning the study of earthly things. In order to understand where rocks come from, we have to learn about the structure of the Earth. Earth's structure has many different layers, like that of an onion. Let's work our way from the inside out. At the center of our planet is an iron core consisting of two layers, the inner and outer core. The solid inner core is roughly the size of the moon. The core temperature of the inner core is estimated at 4,000 degrees Celsius, or 7,200 degrees Fahrenheit. Phew, that is hot. The next layer, at a depth of 1,800 miles from the surface, is the liquid outer core, which is also made of iron and is even hotter than the inner core at 5,000 degrees Celsius, or 9,000 degrees Fahrenheit. This outer core is made of slowly churning iron. As a result, the Earth has a magnetic field that protects us from harmful radiation and particles. The layer covering the outer core is the mantle, which takes up 70% of the Earth's volume. The mantle is made of solid rock and is very hot, near the melting point of rocks, which is about 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit. It is constantly circulating like a liquid, but thicker and a lot slower, like wet cement. The outermost layer is the crust. The majority of the crust here is made of a rock called granite, which is hard and made of grains of other rocks. Now that we've learned a bit about the structure of the Earth, let's move on to the different types of rocks. There are igneous, sedimentary, and metamorphic rocks. Igneous comes from the Latin word ignis, meaning fire. Igneous rocks were once a molten material called magma. Magma forms miles below the Earth's crust at very high temperatures. When the magma reaches the surface, it is considered lava. Churning within the magma are gases that are under constant pressure. As gases escape and push the magma, they eventually find a fissure or a break in the Earth's surface, causing an eruption. The more gas that is released, the more violent the eruption. A great example is when Mount St. Helens exploded in eastern Washington in 1980. The eruption sent a gigantic cloud of superheated gas, steam, and ash into the air. Deep down below the surface, the pressure inside the trapped gases got so powerful that when the pressure finally had an escape route, it blew the side of the mountain clean off. Now that is pressure. Hey, let's visit one of our good friends, Roy Schieser. He's a geologist at Gilbert High School, and he is going to talk about igneous rocks.
This is a piece of granite. Granite is an example of igneous rock, one of the three rock types in the rock cycle, those being igneous, sedimentary, and metamorphic. If you look closely inside of an igneous rock, you'll find that it is made up of a bunch of interlocking crystals of various minerals. This specimen, which is actually a geode, have larger crystals which are visible to the naked eye. These crystals are evidence of atoms being arranged in an orderly fashion. This particular mineral is called quartz, which makes up a good deal of what's inside this specimen. Now, igneous rocks come in two different types. Those rocks which have crystal grains that are visible to the naked eye, and then those types of igneous rocks which have a smooth texture where the crystals are too small to see. The size of the crystals is evidence of whether or not the rock cooled underground or above ground.
How do igneous rocks fit into the rock cycle? Igneous rocks are the beginning and the end of the cycle. As new rocks are formed deep inside the mantle, they eventually are forced up to the surface. Once on the surface, erosion starts to break down the rocks into sedimentary rocks. Sedimentary rocks are made from sediments, or deposits of rocks. Rocks on Earth's surface are eroded through different types of weathering, called mechanical and chemical weathering. Mechanical weathering breaks rocks down by physical means such as wind, frost, and plant roots. No chemical changes occur, just structural changes. Chemical weathering strikes at the chemical makeup of the rock. The main destructive agents are rainwater and substances that are in the rainwater, like carbon dioxide. These agents can dissolve certain kinds of rocks and/or rot the cements that bind the particles of other rocks. As these weathered sediments find their way through rivers to the bottom of the ocean, they start forming layers. As these layers build up over millions of years, they start compacting the layers beneath them. The oldest layer is on the bottom and the youngest on top. As these layers start to pile up, the weight begins to squeeze out any water. The minerals that have been dissolved begin to dry out and form natural cement that forms and hardens into sedimentary rocks. Tectonic plates float on top of the mantle. The plates can dive beneath one another. When the plates meet up, stress builds up and moves the earth. Now that we know a little bit about these layered rocks, let's learn about some different types of sedimentary rocks. Roy, can you tell us more?
Now, sedimentary rocks are formed by the weathering, erosion, and breakdown of other rocks. That weathering, erosion, and breakdown of those rocks is what's responsible for the formation of the sedimentary rocks, one of which we can see behind us. Now, sedimentary rocks come in one of three types, one of which is called the clastic type of sedimentary rock. Clastic sedimentary rocks are formed by the accumulation of mud, sand, pebbles, and cobbles. This is an example of that type of rock. The other types of sedimentary rock are called biogenic or chemical. The biogenic and chemical form of sedimentary rock is formed by the accumulation of dissolved rock, usually underwater. Now, this example here of clastic rock occurred many millions of years ago when there was at one point a much larger mountain than you're seeing behind you at the present time. This mountain, which was behind us, was made of granite. And as that granite mountain eroded, large cobbles and boulders of granite accumulated at the base of the mountain at an angle. Interspersed with these cobbles and pebbles of granite were this red material, which is actually a red mud. As this material became buried, it underwent a process which we call lithification. Turns the sedimentary material into a rock. These deposits that occur at the base of mountains are called alluvial fans. So these are an example of lithified or rock turned into rock alluvial fans. Later, subsequent to the burial and formation of these, some tectonic or movements of the earth occurred, and these were lifted up to their current position.
Thanks, Roy. Let's find out how sedimentary rocks work with the rock cycle. Once rocks have made their way to the surface, they are exposed to erosion where they are broken into smaller rocks. These rocks find their ways to rivers and finally into oceans where they start to build layers. As time passes, these layers are pushed downward into the mantle where they are exposed to heat and pressure, transforming them into metamorphic rocks. Let's move on to the final type of rock, which is metamorphic rock. Metamorphic means change in form by heat and pressure. When you break down the word, meta means change, and morphic means body or form. Igneous, sedimentary, and other metamorphic rocks can all be changed into new metamorphic rocks. Hey Roy, can you tell us how metamorphic rocks are created?
Sure, Jewel. Here we are in an excellent location where you can see examples of metamorphic rock, one of the three rock types in the rock cycle. Remember, the three rock types are igneous, sedimentary, and metamorphic. This rock I'm standing on is a very good example of metamorphic rock. These kinds of rock are formed when other rocks are subjected to heat and pressure, and they change, giving us the word metamorphic, which means meta, to change, and morph, form, change in form. There are two types of metamorphic rocks, one type called non-foliated and the other type called foliated. We give these rocks these names to indicate whether or not the rocks have got a grain in them, sort of like wood. Non-foliated rocks, metamorphic non-foliated rocks, do not have this type of grain in them, whereas foliated metamorphic rocks have a grain to them, sort of like wood. This is an excellent example of a foliated metamorphic rock. When you look at this rock, what you see is that inside the rock, the mineral grains themselves, due to the heat and pressure that's changed the rock, have aligned themselves in a particular direction, just like the grain of a piece of wood. This particular type of foliated metamorphic rock is called a gneiss.
Thanks, Roy. Metamorphic rock is the last stage to the rock cycle. As sedimentary rocks start making their way into the mantle, they are exposed to heat and pressure. As heat and pressure start to increase, the rock melts and starts to mix with the magma. Once the pressurized gases inside the magma are released, the magma makes its way to the surface and cools as new igneous rocks, thus completing the cycle. That's pretty cool. Let's work our way through the entire rock cycle now that we've learned about igneous, sedimentary, and metamorphic rocks. New igneous rocks begin their formation deep in the earth. Eventually, they make their way as magma to the surface through uprising gases that are under pressure. These rocks are then exposed to erosion, which breaks them down. Once they break apart, the rocks are pulled down slopes by gravity into rivers. Here they are transformed into mud, sand, and gravel and carried out to sea. Once in the ocean, the rocks are deposited into layers. As these layers build up over millions of years, the increased weight compresses the older layers. Water is then squeezed out and natural cement forms to create sedimentary rock. As the earth moves or adjusts, these layers compress using heat and pressure, changing it to a metamorphic rock. The deeper the rock is, the more heat and pressure is applied to the rock. This means the rate of change or metamorphism increases also. When the heat gets too extreme, rock will melt and form molten magma. When magma surfaces and cools, it forms new igneous rocks, thus completing one cycle of the rock cycle. But rocks sometimes don't follow this cycle exactly. For example, igneous rocks, especially platonic or intrusive rocks like granite, might be directly changed by heat and pressure instead of being eroded down into sedimentary rock. Sedimentary rocks might be weathered down again and redeposited to make new sedimentary rock. Metamorphic rocks might be pushed up to the surface and eroded away to make new sedimentary rocks. The rock cycle has many cycles rocks can go through, and no one cycle is more important than the other. It is simply a matter of chance on what cycle a rock will travel. The rock cycle is a natural process that has and will continue to turn out new rocks from old rocks. Earth has many cycles, but the rock cycle is the largest. Without it, the Earth would never change. When you're out hiking, take a look at some of the rocks lying around. You will amaze your friends with your knowledge of igneous, sedimentary, and metamorphic rocks. Have fun exploring Earth's playground.